Good morning, Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, Israel. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Good morning to Chabad of Rechavia. And today, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue the subject that we've been learning about, chapter 41 in the Tanya. Actually, yesterday, the last several days, we've been learning about the subject of accepting upon ourselves the yoke of Hashem, being an eved, being a servant, a slave to Hashem. That's our main objective. And we learned about the fact that every time we do a mitzvah, every time we learn Torah and we daven, every word, we are enclothing ourselves into Hashem's Ein Sof, infinite being. And specifically, there are two mitzvahs that the Alter Rebbe singled out. Was the mitzvah of talit and tefillin. So I received some comments about how does this relate to the subject of women, because women do not have this mitzvah of talit and tefillin. And I would like to address this fascinating subject with a couple of introductions, and then hopefully we'll be able to understand how this entire subject is also relevant to women as well. Now, firstly, the subject of mitzvah, every single mitzvah applies to every single person, man or woman. The specific mitzvahs might be physically relevant to a certain person or a certain type of person, but the mitzvahs in general apply to everyone. For example, the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, or the Korban, the offerings. The offerings to be brought in the Beit HaMikdash are only by the Kohanim. That's not fair. Why only the Kohanim? The answer is that everybody takes part. Everybody has their own part in it. Hashem is the one who decides who has which part. So just to put the facts, the facts down, that every single mitzvah applies to everyone. And just because we're discussing the subject of talis and tefillin, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're speaking only about men. We're speaking about every time someone does a mitzvah, even these mitzvahs on another level. But the fact itself that a person connects to these mitzvahs, that already gives them all of the advantages that a person can have through doing the mitzvah. Point number two, a very nice anecdote that my wife told me even before we got married when we were engaged. A very nice thing that I'll never forget. She said that, there's a concept that, I think it's according to the Kabbalah, that there are some mitzvahs that apply to the man and some mitzvahs that apply to the woman. Now, it says that when the two are married, the two are parts of one neshama, two parts of one neshama, so each one completes the other. Each one complements the other. Each one does the mitzvahs, and that does the mitzvah for the other half of the neshama. So she added to that even before the husband and wife are married, the fact itself that they're two parts of one neshama, that itself gives them the zechut and the merit of having the mitzvahs, which physically they might not be observing because it's not for them. It's either for a man or for a woman. But the fact that the other half is observing the other parts of the mitzvahs, the other mitzvahs, that itself gives them the zechut, even before they're engaged. When they're much younger, they might not even know that each one whom the other half of the neshama belongs to. Nevertheless, the mitzvahs are being observed for the other half, which is very, very nice and very heartwarming and encouraging. Namely, for those of us that are married, and those of us that are not yet married, hopefully this also is a bracha and a zechut for them, for that also they are fulfilling every single mitzvah. Bezrat Hashem, that they should be able to fulfill. We should all fulfill all the mitzvahs. The truth is that according to the Kabbalah, we have according to the Zohar, there is the concept of Gilgul Nishamot, which means reincarnation of the souls. So there are some mitzvahs that we do in one lifetime, and one of the reasons why a neshama can come down to this world again would be in order to fulfill all the mitzvahs. I'm just bringing out another example of where sometimes one of the ways that we fulfill that we complete for our souls all of the mitzvahs, because everybody needs to fulfill all of the mitzvahs eventually, is by coming down in reincarnation and fulfilling the mitzvahs in that way. But at the end of the day, our goal is, in some way, shape, or form, to fulfill all of the mitzvot. Sometimes literally, and sometimes metaphorically, spiritually, and not necessarily physically. Now, let's move on to the next subject. And just to explain for those of us that just logged in, that we're addressing what we've been discussing over the past couple of days, the beginning of Tanya chapter Mem Aleph, chapter 41, and the Alter Rebbe discussed the subject of how every time we do a mitzvah, we are connecting to the Ein Sof of Hashem. We are totally, our whole being is becoming batel, is becoming selfless, and is becoming wrapped up in Hashem's great light. For example, the talit and the tefillin, which are both examples of wrapping up. And so we're just trying to explain, hopefully, in short, how this can apply to women as well. Obviously, there are some mitzvahs that do apply to women, but these specific two mitzvot of talit and tefillin don't necessarily apply materially, physically, literally is the right word, literally to women. And so, there's a very important point that I want to bring out. You see, the concept of time is a creation of Hashem. Hashem is higher than time. Hashem always was, is, and always will be. Us human beings, we are limited in time. When the class starts at 9:30 and you log on at 9:25, I'll be very touched and heart-warmed. But the class won't start yet because it's not 9:30. Hopefully we try our best to start 9:30 sharp, latest by 9:31. Obviously every clock is different. But we're limited to a specific time. We cannot be all over the place. You can either be here or you can be there. When you have a simcha, you have a celebration, a simcha, a happy occasion. So you cannot watch the video of the event before the event happened, because it didn't happen yet. So that the event was going to happen, let's say, May 1st. So before May 1st, there's no way that you're going to be able to know, in retrospect, what happened, because it didn't happen yet. Hashem is unlimited. Hashem is not limited by time, just like He's not limited by space. And it's easier for us to understand how space is a limitation, is a creation of Hashem. Before Hashem created the world, there was no such concept of space. And only when Hashem created the world, He also created naturally space. Also, Hashem created time. Time limitations are a creation of Hashem. And Hashem stands above it. And Hashem put us in a limited position that we should be able to do things in a specific time. So too in the concept of mitzvot. There are some mitzvahs that are all the time. For example, love of Hashem, fear of Hashem, honor your parents. They always apply. Whenever you have an opportunity, you need to do those mitzvot. There are some mitzvahs that are bound by time. For example, Pesach, right? We eat matzah. The mitzvah, the biblical mitzvah to eat matzah is the night of Pesach. In other words, the night before the 15th of Nisan, just following Erev Pesach. Now, for the rest of Pesach, there's no mitzvah per se in eating matzah. If you want to wash, for example, there's a Shabbos Chol HaMoed, and we need to wash in the evening, and we need to wash in the morning. So you can't have challah, you need to have matzah. Because you're not allowed to have chametz. However, when it comes to the first night of Pesach, even if you're not in the mood of it, you need to have matzah, at least a kazayit or two, an olive amount, a third of a matzah, half of a matzah, at least, on that night. So we're limited that night, and there's also, you have to have it within 4 or 9 minutes, depending on the opinion. I'm just trying to bring out how this the mitzvahs are very, very specific, also bound by time. In other words, we are limited by time. The moment that the night of Pesach finishes, we are not anymore obligated in the biblical mitzvah of eating matzah. And so on and so forth. There are many mitzvahs that are limited. Now, here's an example of a mitzvah which is sort of a gray area. Tefillah, davening. We just daven Shachris. And the question is tefillah a mitzvah which is all the time or bound by time? And there are different opinions. And the main opinion is that tefillah, davening, is not a mitzvah which is bound by time. True, we do have a mitzvah, we need to daven in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. That is correct. However, the biblical pure mitzvah of tefillah is any time you need something, you need to stop and pray to Hashem in any language from the bottom of your heart. That is the core of the mitzvah of tefillah. Now, true that there's also another part of the mitzvah. The Talmud says in Brachot, the Talmud says that the mitzvah of tefillah, the tefillah was compared to the korbanot, the offering, just like we have offerings in the morning. And that's the tamid. The final offering is towards the evening. And then Ma'ariv is compared to the Eivarim, to the limbs of the animals, which were burnt all night in the apple of the Mizbeach and the apple of the altar. So the 3 tefillot are compared to korbanot. Now we're reading the book of Vayikra, especially over the last few weeks, and about all different types. The book of Leviticus discusses all different types of korbanot, of offerings. So the closest that we can get to offering is the tefillah. So the Chachamim said, our sages told us, that when should you do tefillah, you should really set aside a time, the morning, afternoon, and evening. But that doesn't substitute any time a person needs Hashem. You lost something. Turn to Hashem, please help me find it. Whatever it is. You got into a fight with someone. Please Hashem, give me the energy, the siyata d'shmaya, the help from above, that I should be able to overcome my ulterior motives, and I should be able to make up with my friend. I should be able to make up with my spouse. That anytime you need something, we have a mitzvah, a biblical mitzvah to pray to Hashem, to turn to Hashem. And so therefore, tefillah is initially a mitzvah which is not bound by time, but it also is in some way, shape, or form bound by time. And so now there are many different types of mitzvahs. Many mitzvahs apply all the time, and there are some mitzvahs, many mitzvahs, which are bound to a specific time. We have a rule in halacha that women are not obligated in mitzvahs which are bound by time. There are a few exceptions here and there. Each one has a reason for itself. For example, drinking the 4 cups of wine, which is a mitzvah on the night of Pesach, that's a mitzvah that, and it's questionable if they're. Today, the Alter Rebbe says that women are called chashuvot, are called important, and therefore they need to do the mitzvah. You need to do the mitzvah of 4 cups of wine. And there are many different mitzvahs which are questionable, yes or no. And then there's another question, that if you're not bound by it, are you allowed to do the mitzvah? And so, overall, we say that it's not a bad thing to do the mitzvah, but there's no obligation. In fact, there is something unique about doing a mitzvah even though you're not obligated. Wow, that's commendable. You weren't obligated to do the mitzvah, and you still did it? That's amazing. On the other hand, there is an advantage of fulfilling a mitzvah, dafka, specifically when you were commanded to do it. Because if you're commanded to do it, then you have the mitzvah, you have the commandment, you have the special koach from above. If you weren't commanded, it's a nice thing to do the mitzvah, but it's not necessarily, you weren't commanded, so it's okay, but it's unlike someone who was has the mitzvah, the quote-unquote commandment from Hashem to do the mitzvah. Now getting back to the subject of women not being obligated to do a mitzvah she'azman grama, not being obligated to do a mitzvah which is bound by time. You see, women are different than men. The only way to really deeply understand what I'm going to say now is only if we can accept that the way Hashem created men and the way Hashem created women are totally different types of human beings. No one can convince themselves that we're all the same, equal rights, and there's no difference. The way Hashem created us, not only our bodies, but also the way we think, the way we feel, the way we interpret things, are totally different. There are many psychologists that can give classes and lectures and seminars for on and on, just long conversations explaining this concept, but I'm just giving you the nutshell because this is a long subject, and especially the way I'm going to interpret into Torah is even longer. And we don't have that much time to learn right now. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to delve into this concept. But this is definitely something which Torah accepts. This is a common denominator. This is a thread which goes through many concepts in Torah. And this is also a secret for Shalom Bayit. Shalom Bayit often can be an issue if one or both of the individuals, of the spouses, expects their spouse to act and think like them. But the moment that we realize that the husband is a man and not a woman, and the wife is a woman and not a man, did I just say something? Then we can mend our differences, because we realize that maybe it wasn't necessarily offensive what our spouse said, because they were just saying something based on the way they think. But if they would realize that we're not them, probably they wouldn't have said what they said. And so we can go on and on, but I'm just trying to bring the point across in a nutshell. And so if we talk about this concept, if we can accept, if we can understand, even not understand, if we can accept at least, and understand a little bit and get used to the and read more about this subject and try to explain to ourselves and learn about these concepts, then we'll be able to come to terms with it. Now we're going to try to interpret this concept and borrow from it the way it comes to learning Torah, to observing mitzvahs. Hashem created women much more spiritual than men. Naturally, women are much more in tune to emunah and belief in Hashem and faith in Hashem and davening to Hashem. Men also do that. But the way Hashem created our souls, or the half of our souls, or the source of our souls, is totally different. Women are much more in tune to godliness. Women are much more faithful and believing in Hashem and more connected to Hashem. Therefore, because women are much more in tune to Hashem and Hashem's existence, therefore they are obligated. They have a mitzvah obligated by Hashem to fulfill mitzvahs only which are not bound by time. Because a mitzvah which is not bound by time is like Hashem. Hashem is not bound by time. So just like Hashem is not bound by time, a woman's connection to Hashem is much more obvious. Now obviously men are also obligated in those mitzvahs which are not bound by time. But also women can do mitzvahs which are bound by time. But a man needs to have a balance. It's not enough to have to give a man a mitzvah which is not bound by time. He's just going to lose it. He's not going to be able to focus. He's not going to be able to bring it down to earth. You need to give him mitzvahs. You need to give a man mitzvahs which are bound by time in order to get him to be focused. It's similar to the concept of the way it's been traditionally, that the man is usually the breadwinner, and the woman is the akeret habayit, the main one at home, who makes sure that the family runs smooth and brings the kedusha and the education of the children. That's usually how it's been in the last 50 to 100 years. It's been merged a little bit, but I'm just trying to say conceptually. A guy who's out of a job, oy vavoy, that would be that's a terrible thing. If you know someone that needs a job, it will be one of the greatest mitzvahs to help him find a job. Not only parnasa-wise, I'm talking about psychologically. A guy needs to have the framework. Okay, 9 to 4, 9 to 5, we're going to go to work, and we have this mitzvah, daven before, put on your tefillin, go here, do the shema in the morning, do the shema in the evening, do this, do kiddush. All these mitzvahs, you need to zoom him in, you need to focus him, and then hopefully he'll be able to balance also the unlimited mitzvahs, the mitzvahs that are not bound by time, the unlimited mitzvahs as we may call them, and then he can be focused. And so when we talk about the mitzvah of the mitzvah of talit and tefillin, if you want, we can try to explain how the mitzvah of talit in a spiritual way also applies to the woman. After all, many of us have the minhag, in Chabad as well, that only when you get married, then you have the mitzvah of talit. So you're already you're already focused, it's in the merit of the woman. If you're talking about tefillin, true that women do not have the mitzvah, but the daughters of Rashi, as it's known, did put on tefillin. They had their own reason for it. Today, obviously, women are not allowed to put on tefillin. I'm just trying to bring out how the mitzvah can be connected, and I'm sure we can come up with different explanations how there is a connection to women, between women and the mitzvahs, these specific mitzvahs, or any mitzvah which is bound by time. But that doesn't take away in any way, shape, or form from the importance of women. On the contrary, I believe that because women are important, and because women are more important, therefore they are specifically connected to the mitzvahs which are not bound by time, and there's no reason to be offended or to feel in any way under what's the word I'm looking for? I can't hear you, but I'm sure you're helping me out. Under deserving, they shouldn't feel not deserving of being part of the mitzvahs also, which are bound by time. I just want to mention something very interesting about this blending these two concepts of mitzvahs that are bound by time and mitzvahs that are not bound by time. It's a little bit off topic, but I think it's fascinating. You know, the Rambam, we learn Rambam every day, the 3 chapters of Rambam, and if you don't do it yet, you feel free to log on to our website, jerusalemchabad.org, and you can go to daily study and do the Rambam every day. You can choose to do 3 chapters a day, 1 chapter a day, or the Sefer HaMitzvot, 1 or a few paragraphs of mitzvahs. And so the Rambam has something interesting which many people don't pay attention to. And that is that when he starts a new Sefer, when he starts a new book, there are 14 books of the Rambam, Yad HaChazaka. When he starts a new book, he quotes a verse, which the verse usually should be connected to the subject and the concept of the verse. And just one moment, please. I'm drawing a blank. So for the Sefer of Zmanim, for the 3rd Sefer, which deals with time, talking about time, mitzvahs that are bound by time. For example, it begins with mitzvah of Shabbat. Then it talks about Pesach, and it talks about Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot and Purim, all these mitzvahs, they're all connected to time. So here's the verse that the Rambam quotes right before this. Here we go. Nachalti eidvotecha liolam. David HaMelech says to Hashem in Tehillim chapter 119, it's actually in the Tehillim of tomorrow, where we do the second half of 119 for the 26th of Nisan. Today is 25. Tomorrow is going to be the 26th. Nachalti eidvotecha liolam. I've inherited your mitzvahs, your statutes forever. Ki sison libi hema. For they are the joy of my heart. How wonderful, how nice, how inspiring. And so the Rebbe asks a simple question. I don't think there's anyone besides for the Rebbe in all of history which deals with these verses, which is the introduction to the Sefer of the Rambam. So the Rebbe asks, you're about to start a Sefer which deals with mitzvahs that are bound by time. And what do you say? You quote the verse, Nachalti eidvotecha liolam. I've inherited your mitzvahs, your testimonies forever. La'olam, forever. Maybe you should use that for a Sefer Ahava, which deals with or Mada deals with Ahavat Hashem, love of Hashem, fear of Hashem. Why would you quote a verse which deals with observing mitzvahs forever? In other words, not bound by time. And this is an introduction for the Sefer Zmanim. And the Rebbe explains a fascinating subject. The Rebbe says that every time we do a mitzvah, true that this mitzvah is, let's say, bound by time, Shabbat, Chanukah, Pesach, whatever it is. Nevertheless, the message of the mitzvah, the atmosphere of the mitzvah, the aura of the mitzvah should not be reserved for a specific time. And that's the message of the Rambam. Nachalti eidvotecha li olam. The Rambam is saying, I want you to take these mitzvahs that I'm going to talk about soon in this Sefer, in this book of Zmanim, and I want you to implement the lessons li olam, forever. Because mitzvahs, true, many of them are bound by time, but it's not necessarily limited to that. We need to be able to expand. So I just thought I would share with you this beautiful insight into connecting the subject of mitzvahs that are bound by time with mitzvahs that are not bound by time. Each one has something special, and we can share, we can blend together, and we can hopefully inspire each other that that the mitzvahs that we do should through Ahavat Yisrael, just like Shalom Bayit. So by Ahavat Yisrael, especially Ahavat Yisrael for no reason, just Ahavat Yisrael Chinam. For no reason, hopefully this will connect us all, and we'll all have all the advantages that each and every one of us have. In other words, after we've established that each one has its own, for example, a man has his own specialties, a woman has her own specialties, each tribe has their own specialty, Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. Once we understand the limitations, then we can go along and blend us all together and hopefully share the unique specialties that each and every one of us has. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, 9:30 right here. And I should mention that, first of all, this is in memory of Rabbi Daniel Levy, the executive director of OK Kashrut Worldwide, who unfortunately passed away a few days ago.